Hi, welcome to Pearls of Motherhood. I'm your host, Tessie.
And I'm your host, Diana. In today's episode, we're tackling something that many parents can relate to: the idea of not relying exclusively on parenting books. Now, don't get me wrong, parenting books can be wonderful tools. They offer insight into child development, they give us strategies for handling everything from tantrums to potty training, and they often come from experts who know what they're talking about, but not all the time. But here's the thing: if we rely too much on them, we can end up feeling like we're failing when things don't go according to plan. And that's just not the reality of being a mom.
Yeah, so in today's episode, we'll talk about why parenting books shouldn't be your only guide, how to balance book advice with your own instincts, because we're all about gut instincts here, and why trusting yourself might be the most important thing you can do as a parent. Because let's face it, I understand that there's experts in many different fields, but we're with our children 24/7. So we're the experts of our children at the end of the day, right? So first, we're going to get into mom facts and book corner.
So, mom facts. If you do the math, a year of breastfeeding for the average mom amounts up to nearly 1,800 hours of a mom's time. Now, if you think about that in terms of a full-time job with a 40-hour work week and 3 weeks of yearly vacation, that job amounts up to 1,960 hours. So similar. So breastfeeding is a full-time job, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Tell them to do the math.
100%. This is why being a mom is a job. It's a job in and of itself.
Exactly. I mean, seriously, just feeding your child is literally a full-time job.
That is insane when you do the math on that. Just to wrap your head around that it's insane. Just like there's no other words to say.
It is. It is. And how often I know for me, when I was nursing, I felt bad. Like, oh, I'm not doing anything. But the reality is, you're doing a lot. If we're saying a person who has a 40-hour work week job is being productive, then we can absolutely say that about a mom. And she's only feeding her child, not to mention everything else that goes into being a mom and caring for that baby or babies.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible when you think about it.
Well, the math doesn't lie.
So in Book Corner, we're going to talk about I Am a Rainbow by Dolly Parton. And it's a really great book. It teaches colors, emotions, empathy. It's really great all around.
It really is. It's one of my favorite books to read to my daughter. It came from the Imagination Library with Dolly Parton, and it is so attractive. It came in the first year, and it's so colorful. And I love that one book teaches so much in one package. And it's something that my daughter picks up on practically on a weekly basis because it's so entertaining.
Yeah. So I know we've mentioned Imagination Library before, but if you are not signed up for this, you should for sure go to your library and look into it because it's such an awesome program.
In fact, we'll try to put a link in our descriptions for you.
Yeah. So moving on into our topic for the day, parenting books, and why they aren't really all that in a bag of chips. Do people still say that? I mean,
I like it. I love chips, but it's not all that.
I'm
chips, not parenting books.
Exactly. Are we on the same page here where like we're just not huge parenting book people? I've definitely tried it, and it's just not really my thing because at the end of the day, what I feel like happens is I feel like they kind of sell like a magical parenting like experience where it's like, okay, well, if you're having this problem with your child, you try this solution, and like the first time it works. And I'm just like, that's just not reality, first of all. And secondly, like every child is different. All of my children are different. I have to discipline them all differently, and they're all unique. And so that's where I feel like mom gut, our intuition, comes in so strongly. It's like nobody can know in this specific situation what is going to be the best scenario for your child, except for you. And so even it's good to like gather information. I'm a huge fan of gathering information, reading, taking everything with a grain of salt, which I think you should do in life in general. Question everything. I always question, like, why are they saying this? What is their agenda or whatever? And, you know, is it true? Are they just trying to sell books? You know, could they even be like, what if they're not even parents? You know, or like it's like a person who writing a relationship book, and what if they've been through 3 divorces? So in my opinion, like knowing the background of the person writing the book is like a huge thing too, because like what if they didn't raise successful children? Like this is a whole thing where if you don't know the person directly and you don't actually know the source, like how can you trust it? And so that's where I get a little bit skeptical anyways. But I think it's good to be skeptical. It's good to gather the information and take it with a grain of salt. Take what you feel works for you. Maybe there is something out of a book that does work, but like maybe not everything does work. So just don't let it define you as a parent, I would think, because it's not going to be the same for everybody. And I think a lot of the times these books can make you kind of feel like inadequate. Oh, well, I tried that one time and it didn't work like they said it would work in the book, you know? So, I mean, we can go into that in a little bit like more detail, but.
Well, I think that what you said there is very relevant. I mean, you need to know the background of the author, the background of their history and their, I guess, their credentials, right? But also, why are we using these books? Because these books are essentially there to be sold, and they kind of market a one size fits all momhood or parenthood, and that's just not the truth. And that's the first thing with why you and I don't subscribe exclusively to parenting books. There's no one size fits all. They give the illusion that, hey, you do this one thing, you follow my lead, buy into this, and magic, your child's going to be perfect. Because sure, a book can offer, a step-by-step process for things like sleep training or getting your toddler to stop hitting or biting, but every child is different. I mean, Tess, 4 children, and they're all different. You have to parent them so differently. So what works for one family or even one child within the family is not going to work for the next one. So sleep training, Tess, that's something you and I feel very passionate about. For me, sleep training is not something that I can do for my child. What about you?
Yeah, I think like for my first 2, I was really, I don't know what the word is, but I was like convinced, I guess is the word, that sleep training was a thing. And all I needed to do was get the perfect sleep training program or the perfect book, follow it to a T, and my child would be sleeping through the night at an incredibly young age, and life would be so glorious. And in reality, what happened was I tried all of these things. They went 100% against what my motherly instinct said. Like, for instance, not to pick them up, let them cry for 2 hours, 3 hours, let them put themselves to sleep, not comfort them and stuff like that. And that just completely went against what I felt in my gut was like a right thing to do. So but what happened in the process is, I obviously I failed because you and I don't, it's pretty known. We don't believe in sleep training. We don't believe that's a thing. We think that's a huge scam. And so obviously it failed. And when it failed, I was like, obviously, what's wrong with me? Why can't I train my kids? What's wrong with my kids? And I started looking at them like, why are you not a normal kid? And that's such a horrible place to put somebody in mentally, just to sell books and just to make money, honestly. And I actually think it's pretty disgusting. But so that was my experience. After 2 children, I said, you know what? This is a crock of you know what, and I am not doing this anymore. I'm just going to go with what I believe and what I think is right. What about you?
So for me, I only have my one, and I love the idea. They can sleep 9 to 12 hours, self-soothe, and go back to sleep on their own, and life is going to be roses, and we're all well rested. And that did not happen. My daughter was still pretty young when I first tried to sleep train her. And let me tell you, it was a disaster. I was with my husband and we put her to bed, and she woke up maybe half an hour later and she was just crying. So we said, okay, let's try this cry it out method. So it was one that you let them cry it out for about 30 minutes and then they'll put themselves back to sleep. I made it to the 30 minutes, but I was crying too. And my husband was very disconcerted. He was disturbed. And in the end, I ran upstairs after 30 minutes. After the timer went off, I ran upstairs. I grabbed her, and she's hysterical. I'm hysterical. And we both just fell asleep together because we were so exhausted. And we said, this is not the way for me. This is not the way for us. So I take it from a little bit from what my mom did. My mom never let us cry it out. She was always there to pick us up. And I think we're the 4 of us are pretty well-adjusted humans. So I realized that for my daughter, for my family, it was not the way to go, because to me, she's crying for a reason. She was crying because she was hungry. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she had a wet diaper. I think you say it best, Tess. Our children are not out there to get us. Sometimes it feels that way at 2 a.m, but they're not there to try to hurt us. They're trying to communicate something with us. And for me, just ignoring her is not the way to go, because we all cry and it's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, really, okay. So one point is after 4 kids, I have realized that literally, I don't think there's ever been a time at night where they've woken up and there hasn't been a reason for them to be crying. And I know that some of these sleep theories are like, oh, just ignore them. They'll put themselves back to sleep, even if it takes 2 hours. Okay, but when I go in there and there's a poopy diaper, okay, but if you had followed that advice and just left them in that diaper for 2 hours plus all night, that will make you feel horrible. And so just in my experience, there's never been ever a moment when they've cried at night and there hasn't been a good reason for it. So the fact to just leave them and ignore them, it just actually tears my heart out that some kids go through that because people are convinced that this is the right thing to do. And it's just not,
And maybe once they did cry it out, it's because they were exhausted.
Yeah, well, that's probably what. Oh, my other point is as adults, do we ever wake up at night? Do you ever wake up? I wake up all the time at night. Sometimes I'm up for 2 hours straight and I can't go back to sleep. Sometimes I do wake up and I'm hungry, thirsty a lot of the times, There's reasons that even adults wake up. Do you really think, how would you feel if you woke up at night and you weren't allowed to get out of your bed and meet your need and you were just there to self-soothe yourself back to sleep? I mean, the whole concept of it sounds absurd because they're not robots. You can't just train them and then they do exactly what you want them to do every single time, like clockwork, like a robot, because you're not a robot. No human's a robot. So if you think about it.
Imagine lying your own poopy diaper.
So sad. Yeah. Could you imagine that? So, anyways, trusting your instincts over a book is like just the most important thing that you can do. At Pearls of Motherhood, we are all about trust your gut. One of the most empowering things you can do as a parent is trust your instincts. Because, like, especially if you kind of almost train yourself, oh, well, I'm not going to trust my gut. I'm going to go with what this book told me to do, right? Then what if you're in this situation like 7-8 years down the road where your child is around some creepy person that your gut is telling you, oh, that person's a creep, but you've almost like trained your own gut instinct out of your own self when it comes to your kids because you're just taking all of the advice from books and then you don't protect your kid from the creep, you know, like it could be a bad thing, like training yourself not to trust your gut. That's not a good thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So parenting books, they can provide valuable tips, but they don't know your kid like you know your kid. You can take their advice with a grain of salt is what we recommend that you do. It's a great guideline, but you know your kid. So do what you feel is right. So that's our next point. You have to trust your instincts over a book.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, okay, just think about it right now in your mind. Whatever you're doing, just think about. Have you ever had a situation where your gut was telling you something pretty strong and you let your brain override that and it totally turned out really badly? Can you think about like a situation that's happened to you?
So, yeah. Okay, so books tell you don't co-sleep with your toddler. I'll admit, I do it. I co-sleep with my little girl. And the reason I do it, so basically she was sick. So backtrack. She was sleeping all by herself. It was great in her crib, in her own room. And then one day she got sick. She got the sniffles. It was hard to breathe at night, so I had to hold her. So she got used to that for the next week. And then I tried to put her back in to sleep on her own, and it didn't work. And I kept on reading articles and books about how bad it is to co-sleep and how you need to protect your time as parents. And it just felt wrong. And so one day I was with her, I was giving her a bottle for a nap, and I just decided to talk to her. And we have conversations. And I asked her point blank, "Are you afraid of the dark?" And she took the bottle out of her mouth and looked me in the eye and said, "Yes." And then climbed up on me and just grabbed my shirt and just wouldn't let me go until I promised her I would not leave her while she slept and that I would stay with her. And then she finally went back to sleep after I soothed her and I promised her. And over time, we've built that trust that I would be there with her. And I was talking to my sister-in-law who has an amazing little boy. My nephew, love him to pieces. And she co-slept with him. And he's 12 years old now. And she said the most poignant thing to me. And she said, "I don't regret it." He is 12 years old now. He sleeps on his own. He's a grown human. But at least I can say when I look back, I never left him when he needed me the most. And so now instead of calling it co-sleeping, I just call it extra snuggle time. So I think reframing it is really important. So books told me don't do it. My gut said my daughter needs me. So I do it.
I mean, it's not like you're 600 pounds and you're going to crush her if you roll over on her, which I think is like
she's more likely to crush me, to tell you the truth.
I know. Yeah.
She asserts herself, so I don't have to worry about crushing her, rolling over on her. She's more likely to crush my trachea with her little elbow at night. So, you know.
Yeah, so actually it's more dangerous for the parent to go to sleep, so you better watch your back. Baby myth
sort of dispelled, sort of.
I feel like in my life in general, and especially after having kids, I just feel like there's been more than one episode or instance where I had a gut instinct when it came to my kids. And then I said, I'm going to go against that. And then it did not work out. I can't think of like an exact example at the moment, but what I have discovered, and maybe it's just because I'm getting older in general, is that if I get a feeling of like, do this, don't do that, literally no matter what it is, even if it doesn't make any sense, I go with it. Because like, here's an example. It's not with my kids, but last week I was driving and there were two different ways to get home. I was driving an hour and a half to get back to my house through the mountains. And there were two different ways to go home. One way was which is the shortest way, and it's the way I always go. But it's a 2-lane highway that's very curvy, up and down hills. There's horses, lots of bikers, and it was dark. So that's the way I always go, though, even if it's dark. And then the other way was 2-lane highway all the way, but it was a little bit longer. It's not that much longer. But for some reason, and I had my son in the car, for some reason, I was just like, I should not go that way. And still to this day, obviously, I have no idea why my gut was telling me not to go that way. But I was like, okay, if I have this feeling, I'm not going to go that way. And so I didn't. And for all I know, I could have ran into a horse or been head-on collision or who knows, you know what I mean? But I kind of, over time, especially when my kids are involved, even if I have like the slightest inkling that like something is wrong or I should not do this or I should do this or any sort of gut feeling, I go with it and I don't even question it anymore. I just go, okay, well, God's in control and there's a reason for this. Your gut doesn't lie to you. Your gut doesn't have anything to gain from making you feel one way or the other. So why would you not follow it? So like from now on, that's just what I do. I don't even question it anymore.
I love that. You trust your mom sense.
Yeah. So it's good. Go with your gut. Books can give us a framework, but they really can't replace that deep knowledge that develops as we spend time with our kids. They just can't do it. We're the ones that know. We know all of our kids. They're all unique. And so parenting is about being present and responding to your child's need in that moment. That's the most important thing. And not necessarily following a script. That's impossible.
That is so true. You need to improvise. It's okay to improvise sometimes, a lot of times. But by improvising and trusting your gut, you also protect yourself from our third point, the information overload. That's another reason why we don't rely strictly on parenting books. So the overload of information from parenting books, articles, and blogs, it can make us feel like there's only one right way to do everything. Should you breastfeed or bottle feed? Is co-sleeping a good idea? No, that's what they tell me. Or when should you start potty training? Oh, you need to be potty trained by the age of 2. Hey, I'll tell you what, my daughter's 2 and I forced it and I now regret it because now she won't go near the potty. So when you have all this information, it can be really overwhelming. Tessie, do you have any experience with information overload and anything like that?
Oh, yes. Okay. So first off, what I found when I was like a new parent and I was reading parenting books, what I found a lot of the times was I would read one book and it would say one thing, and then I would read another book and it would say the complete opposite. I don't know if you found that, but I was like, what the heck is this? Mm-hmm. So how can you you know what I mean? So to me, just that in and of itself is like, there's clearly no right one way to do anything when it comes to parenting. And then so either it just gives you like a confirmation bias and you're happy about what you're reading, or you're just completely confused and like, don't know who to trust, don't know what to read, who to listen to, or anything like that. So I did find that, and that was actually very frustrating to me. My mom's always asking me, like, well, how many parenting books do you read? And which books are you reading? And because I do have a sister-in-law who she reads every parenting book and she takes it as if it was the Bible, and she like implements everything from these like parenting books. And I don't know how she does it, but I'm like, okay, you guys go over there and read your parenting books together and leave me out of it. But there was one book that I read really early on. It was called Elimination Communication. I think that's the name of it. And so this book, it's actually kind of embarrassing, but this book is about how to potty train your newborn.
What? Do tell me more.
So this was with my first, obviously. It's all about how to potty train your newborn. Yes.
Did you try it?
Yes, I did. Okay. And so here was my
first one.
Here was my experience with it. Okay. So obviously I wasn't able to potty train a newborn. However, and I feel like this is a theory that could literally only work for a mom of one, right? That's a stay-at-home mom who does nothing else but be with their kid, okay, which was me. Okay, so that's the only reason it was successful when it was. But it actually, my son, when he was 5 months old, I was able to basically potty train him for number 2 on the potty. And so he did not poop in a diaper for his entire, since 5 months old until he was like 1 when I had another baby. But the whole key of the book is you just literally like spend every waking moment staring at your child and listening to their grunts and like picking up on which grunt means pee and which one means poop, and then like taking the diaper off and setting him on the toilet. And I had to carry a toilet with me everywhere I went. It was so absurd. It was so ridiculous. But like I did that, and now it's like sometimes I do wonder, did I like mess him up mentally? Because he's like a little bit different, but like not in a bad way, but definitely
he is perfect. He is a perfect little boy. Okay,
he is perfect. He is, but he's just like nothing like my other two.
That book was wrong. But that book was wrong. You did not potty train him. He was potty trained at 5 months, not a newborn. So that book was not wrong. Well, no, that book was wrong. Excuse me. I know my words.
Still, though, here's the thing. It was such a pain in the butt because he's a 5-month-old and I'm sitting here taking him into public bathrooms, holding him on the toilet while he's pooping. It's like such like a ridiculous waste of energy. Don't do it. And then when he was 1.5, his brother was born. And then at that time, obviously, I didn't have time to just sit around and be with him and like pay attention to when he had to poop. And so I put him in a diaper and like didn't have time for that. And then I had to potty train him at 2 years old, which he was fairly easy to potty train from there, but like not any harder than he was a little easier. But anyways, that's my experience with a very interesting book. What about you?
That is a very interesting book. I went down what I call the pacifier rabbit hole. When my daughter was born, you know, she needed to be self-soothed, or I thought she needed to self-soothe. And everyone said, give her a pacifier. But I don't want to. I don't want to give her a pacifier. So I was thinking, do I not? And I started reading all these articles. Yes, you should. No, you shouldn't. It's going to ruin their teeth. It's good for their suckling. It's bad for their suckling. I was very confused. And then I asked other moms. And some moms said, yes, absolutely do it. No, don't do it. And I was so torn. I gave myself so much anxiety over it. And so one day then I said, okay, I'm going to try the pacifier. Now, which pacifier should I buy? There are so many out there. So I went down another rabbit hole, and I think I bought like 7 different pacifiers, and I didn't use them until one night I was with my daughter, and of course she doesn't like being changed in the middle of the night. So she was screaming at the top of her lungs. I thought, oh, I don't want to wake up Daddy. So I gave her a pacifier. I stuck it in her mouth, and she took it. Her eyes got really big, and then she spit it out and looked at me like I was the worst human in the world because there's no food on the other end. And she screamed even louder. And I just thought, oh, and that's when my husband did come in and go, is everything okay? I said, yeah, I gave her a pacifier. She didn't like it. He goes, well, that's her answer. She doesn't like it. But I went down this horrible rabbit hole of, do I not? Which one should I get? Should I buy all of them? And I did. And it was terrible. And in the end, she said it for me straight. I didn't need all that information. I didn't need to stay up all those nights reading and then thinking about it and then dreaming about it. So kids are completely unpredictable. They do not fit into a textbook. Mine doesn't. So sometimes the right parenting thing is to just listen to your gut. Listen to your own intuition again, and take the overload of information and put it to the side. You don't need it. Don't fuss yourself over it. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present.
Yeah, and that is like a rabbit hole you can go down by constantly trying to like get it right. And the perfection, then you're going to end up like making so many more mistakes than you probably would if you just went with your gut at the end of the day.
Yeah, my bank account agrees with that. It said, why? Why did you do that? Why did you buy all these things and not use it?
Yeah. So, so point number 4, it's the pressure to follow a formula. You can get that pressure from reading parenting books or different styles and different theories, and relying too heavily on it is just this huge pressure. Our kid, like I said, our kids are not robots, and there is not a formula that you can actually use, especially that's going to work on every single kid. And I do feel like that's like a big theme of these books is that you do this and it works. Like it's as far as like discipline type of thing. You just do this discipline and then this behavior never happens again. It's like, that's so not true. Like, have you ever raised a kid? I don't know. It makes me wonder.
Or are you a human? Have you tried something and then you go back to it? I mean, I know I have. When I try to set new habits or something like that, I do something one time, that's not going to stick. I go and do what I want to do.
That's true. And kids are like the masters at pushing your buttons. And they're so intuitive that they know, okay, they're like, oh, well, that pushed mommy's button. Maybe I'll try that again. And it's like almost the opposite. They're like masters at reverse psychology. They're like, okay, well, mommy doesn't like that. Let's try it again. You know, they're not going to do what you say. It's not going to work out that way. They're going to figure it out in their head. What you really want, they're going to do the opposite.
I call them mommy masterminds.
Yeah.
Another formula that seems to be everywhere is developing emotional intelligence in children. Like, you want your kid to be attuned to needs and wants of others. But when we follow a formula, are we really listening to them? So why should they be empathetic if we're saying, no, you need to absolutely do this right now? Now, don't get me wrong. There are times that you need to do that, but you can't always do it and then expect to have perfect in-tuned children to other people's needs when we're ignoring them.
such a good point.
Is there a formula that you followed that didn't quite work, but everyone swears by it?
Well, like everyone or like these parenting books swears by it.
Well, I mean, anyone, whatever floats your boat, whatever you have something for.
I would definitely say like the whole 3-day potty training myth, in my opinion. That's not a thing. Come on. Okay, so it takes like your child at least a week to figure out how to like know when they need to release it and sit on the potty at the same time. Like it's not an instant thing that they just do. I don't think. Like all of my kids, they would go sit on the potty, stand up, and then release it. And it's like, oh no, you were just a little bit, like it took them a while to connect that and be able to physically do that. So 3 days to be fully potty trained overnight and during the day and everything, like no pull-ups and no diapers. I don't know. That's not something that worked for me anyways.
I think you put it in a really interesting perspective for me because, again, I haven't potty trained yet, and you've done it several times. I think, what was the time frame? I think you said 1 week to kind of make the association of, okay, they got to go, they have to go here, but I think you said 6 months to really get it right.
Yeah, I think so. Where you're not having
that's like, more than 3 days.
The occasional accident or, for them to fully, sometimes they have accidents or they're not used to, they're playing too much or, you know what I mean? Like they need to prioritize that, learning that. I mean, that takes time, more than 3 days for sure.
Okay. So for me, it's a bedtime formula. How many books out there tell you, okay, bath time, story, and bed, and you magically get your child to go to sleep? But for me, that doesn't work because a bath stimulates my daughter. She gets even more excited. So that's completely counterproductive for me. I have a child who's bouncing off the walls without giving her any sugar just because she played in water and she loves water. So for me, a bath, story, and bed does not work. I have to kind of pivot on a daily basis to see, okay, where are we? What are we doing? And okay, let's start calming down in different ways. So the bedtime formula for me does not work.
Yeah, that's a good one too, because and they also say things like, oh, well, they'll want to have a drink of water or get a snack so that they can get out of bed and stuff like that. And it's like, well, so, like sometimes they're legitimately thirsty. Like sometimes they're legitimately hungry. And so it just depends on the day, honestly.
Or they legitimately have to go to the bathroom.
Yes. It's not all just like this form of master manipulation by a 3-year-old, like I feel like that's a theme in these books that we're all being master manipulated by 3-year-olds. Like you remember that show when we were kids, the Pinky and the Brain? It's like, what are we, Pinky and they're the brain or something?
Yes.
So absurd.
Now I have that theme song stuck in my head. Thank you very much. That has not been there for years. Gonna have to stream it later.
Yeah, so instead of following formulas, we need to give ourselves permission to like experiment, adapt, understand every child is different. Some days will go according to plan and other days are just a complete mess. And that's okay. It's okay. Like you just have to also know that's okay. The fact that you don't have control of every little aspect of every little day of a human who's not a robot, that's okay. Cut yourself some slack.
Because in the end, point number 5, parenting is a journey. It's not a checklist. There's no end goal where you can say, hey, I did great. I'm out. Bye. You're 18. I'm gone. What? You're potty trained. It's been 3 days. Check. I did my 3 days. You're on your own. That's not going to happen.
That's so true.
Parenthood, momhood is ongoing, ever-changing process that involves growth for both you and your child. So sometimes you may feel like it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or even all backwards. But the net gain is still forward, and that's so important to remember. Babies and kids have regressions, which is completely normal. And having a checklist doesn't allow for their growth and makes us as moms feel resentful and then guilty, like we're terrible moms.
Yeah, it definitely makes me think of here should be like the parenting book of the year. Nothing will ever go as planned. And then open it and it's just like, that's it. Nothing will ever go as planned. Period. Right?
Oftentimes I think that sometimes, like we said, parenting books are great for guidelines, but we are all, like you said, experts on our own kids. So we should be each of us writing our own book on parenting. I think it's called a journal. It's called a journal.
Yeah, I feel like a huge theme of parenting, which definitely isn't discussed in these books that I've read anyways, is that like nothing goes as planned ever. I just feel like you can plan it out or think that you're going to do something a certain way or think you're going to go and this adventure wherever is going to be this certain way. And it doesn't. Like your newborn, you'll be ready to leave the house and put him in the car seat, everyone load up, and your newborn will poop and have a huge explosion in the car seat. It's like that just completely messed up your timeline right there. And that's just one tiny little example. So that's, I feel like, a huge what you need to take away from parenting books. I don't know if they really, I got to admit, I don't read a lot of them, but I don't really feel like that's a huge theme that like, go with the flow, go with the flow. Mm-hmm. Have you read any that are like that?
And I think that comes from experience. I'm not a big fan of parenting books. I read one, I think we talked about it on the last episode, the Spirited Child book. And now that one resonated with me in a lot of ways because I do have a spirited child. So that did help me. But I've picked up a lot of ones here and there, many of them here and there. And after the first 1 or 2 chapters, I kind of put them aside. So I've stopped reading them. I do read studies and articles online for guidance, but the truth is that I kind of the list that we're giving you right here is something that is very relevant to Tessie and I. We wrote this for a reason.
We have gone down this path of like just complete helplessness or inadequacy. That's the word, inadequacy, because yes. We've gone down that path of reading parenting books that don't apply to our lives, to our children, to our gut. And then we have internalized that and felt like a terrible mother because of it. And so I feel like we're doing this episode because we want you to know out there that if you have ever felt that way, or if you are feeling that way, or you're like super frustrated because you've had these same experiences, you're not alone. You're probably the majority, to be honest about it. But mothers don't talk about this stuff. Like when we do play dates and stuff, and I go to play dates, moms aren't talking about like their failures, their inadequacies, or where they're like falling short, or where they're not meeting the timelines of the parenting books. All like what I've experienced, mothers are out there bragging about their kids and their 3-day potty training and this book they read that's so fabulous and wonderful. And it's like,
just we're 3-year-old only reading books.
Yeah. Yeah, so I feel like that's the reason we're doing this is so that you don't feel inadequate as a mother. You're doing a perfectly good job. The fact that you're even questioning it or feeling bad about it or even trying to read books and trying to be a good mother is putting you in a level above and making you actually a good mother. So just know that. That's all I wanted to say.
And at the very least, you have Tessie and I with you right there. So you are not alone. And if it's just us, that's okay too.
And you know what? Honestly, if you're one of those people who's like, I read all these books and I implemented it to the T and my children are perfect and like, more power to you. I think that's great. It's not like we're knocking anybody who's like implemented anything that they've read in a book or who likes to read parenting books or who, it's not like we're saying don't, we're saying go with your gut at the end of the day. That's our theme. So if that's what your gut tells you to do is read the next parenting book and like implement it, do it. More power to you. We want that. So we're not saying there's one size fits all. I feel like we've said that a million times.
That's right. I think that can bring us to point number 6, right? Blending advice with real life experience. If you've done it and it works for you, that's fabulous. We're so happy for you.
Yeah, like books can provide useful framework. And it's kind of a similar thing where if you have like elders that in your family, mothers, grandmothers, aunts, or anyone who imparts their wisdom on you, I feel like you should put that in the same category. It's like you take it, but you don't necessarily have to do everything that your mother tells you that you should do, or that your grandmother or your aunt or a neighbor, it's the same thing. You can take the information and then you can apply it to real life experience. Say, okay, well, that didn't work for my family. That didn't work for my kid. So, toss it or, ask for other advice. It's all about a good balance.
It's okay. So I guess this blend of outside advice and personal experience that's what's going to allow you to grow as a mom and be more confident in your decisions. And as we grow more confident, we feel better about how we're doing and what we're doing. So just hang in there. Don't take every piece of advice out there as the one formula, the end all be all. You do you, listen to your gut, and blend what you need and what's right for your family.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to do in life. It's just you shouldn't be so far extreme on one end or the other. You should be open-minded. I think that's a good way to be in life. You should be open-minded. But at the end of the day, like, don't do something that you're not comfortable with doing just because somebody tells you to do it at the end of the day. Like, did your mom ever tell you, oh, just because Johnny's going to go jump off a bridge, would you go jump off a bridge? Like, no.
So, my mom did tell me that. And in my head, I grew up in New York City. And so the bridges I had were like extreme bridges, like the Manhattan Bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, the Verrazano Bridge. And I'm thinking, why would Johnny do that? That's not smart. I didn't understand at the time what she was trying to say, but I was like, wow, that's dark, Mom.
Yeah, so don't follow the crowd. Don't just because somebody tells you to do something like sleep training, for instance, and it completely goes against how you feel as a mother that you don't do it. Just don't do it. Like, that's just silly. So in conclusion, the power of parenting without a script, it's very powerful. And also because it kind of goes with the ebbs and flow of how motherhood is. It's not like one size fits all. It's not going to be the same every single day. It's not going to go as you're planned, as anything is planned. And while parenting books can be a helpful resource, they should never be your only source of guidance. And you should just go with your gut. Every child's different. Instincts are very invaluable. And the beauty of parenting lies in learning as you go. That's part of the fun of it too. You can try new things, and if it doesn't work, try something else. If it does work, keep doing it. The best thing you can do, trust in yourself and take what you resonate with
Mhm.
and then let the rest go. If you like reading these books, just take what you feel like in your gut is like good and just forget the rest. There's no perfect way to raise a child.
Mm-hmm.
Do what's right for you.
Blend your experience with outside advice.
So be flexible and be authentic and do what's right for your family.
That's right. I think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for listening to us at Pearls of Motherhood. Please feel free to contact us at pearlsofmotherhood.com and to email us at ideas@pearlsofmotherhood.com. We're also on Instagram at POMCAST. That's POMCASTS. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode or any ideas for future episodes. After all, we are a podcast for all moms, and we would love to know what you'd like to explore. New episodes will drop once a week on Friday, so stay tuned for more fun and more pearls. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.
Bye.